On Monday, US President Donald Trump, alongside Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, presented yet another peace plan for Gaza. Despite the fact that the previous proposed ceasefires have all fallen short, Trump seemed remarkably optimistic about this one, claiming that it could even bring, quote, eternal peace to the Middle East. However, in the press conference afterwards, both Trump and Netanyahu made it clear that if Hamas didn't accept the deal, Israel would escalate its war in Gaza, with Netanyahu promising to, quote, finish the job, and Trump promising American support to that end. So in this video, we're going to take a look at this new peace plan, why there's reason to suspect that Hamas won't accept it, and what might actually happen next. If you're interested in the political alliances and groupings that shape our world, then you might enjoy our poster, Every Alliance Explained. It shows, in slightly confusing detail, all of the world's major alliances and how different countries link together. Check out the poster by clicking the links in the description. So let's get straight into it. We've actually got the full text of Trump's new peace plan for Gaza, and it's composed of 20 bullet points, which we'll run through quickly now, so stick with me. Point 1 states that Gaza will become a de-radicalized, terror-free zone. Point 2 states that Gaza will be redeveloped, quote, for the benefit of the people. Point 3 states that if both sides agree, the war will end immediately. Importantly, however, this doesn't mean that IDF troops will withdraw from Gaza. Rather, they'll just withdraw to a, quote, agreed-upon line, only a kilometer or so back from their current line of control. Points 4 and 5 deal with hostages, obliging Hamas to return all hostages in return for thousands of Gazans detained since October 7th. Point 6 offers an amnesty to Hamas members who commit to peaceful coexistence and decommission their weapons, while points 7 and 8 essentially guarantee a resumption of humanitarian aid into Gaza. Point 9 says that Gaza will temporarily be governed by a technocratic committee of Palestinians and international development experts, overseen by a so-called Board of Peace, to be chaired by Trump and include former British Prime Minister Tony Blair. This committee will govern Gaza until the Palestinian Authority, which is nominally responsible for the governance of the West Bank, has, quote, completed its reform program. It's worth noting that this is, at first glance, quite a significant concession from Netanyahu, who's previously refused to countenance the idea of a Palestinian Authority playing any role in Gaza. Although, of course, a lot depends here on what exactly is meant by completed its reform program. And the deal also makes reference to Trump's 2020 plan, which required the Palestinian Authority to swallow some pretty bitter pills, including refraining from any attempt to join any international organization without Israel's consent, and taking no action against Israel or the US via the ICC, ICJ, and all other tribunals. Next up is point 10, which includes some waffle about Trump's economic development plan. Point 11 then says that Gaza will become a special economic zone with preferential tariff rates. Point 12 addresses the question of Palestinians being forcibly expelled from Gaza, which is something that Israel has been accused of considering, insisting that, quote, no one will be forced to leave Gaza, and those who wish to leave will be free to do so and free to return. Point 13 then basically says that Hamas must agree not to have any role in Gaza's post-war governance structure and its total demilitarization. Points 14 and 15 then basically say that Gaza's Arab neighbors will lead a new international coalition called the International Stabilization Force, or ISF, that will essentially become responsible for security inside the Strip. Point 16 says that the ISF will gradually take over from the IDF, who will eventually only be responsible for security along Gaza's borders with Israel and Egypt. Interestingly, point 17 says that this will happen even if Hamas rejects the deal. In other words, this Arab-led coalition would apparently replace the IDF, whatever happens. Points 18, 19, and 20 then basically say that Palestinians, Israel, and the US will work together towards peaceful coexistence and, quote, a credible pathway to Palestinian self-determination and statehood, which we recognize as the aspiration of the Palestinian people. At first glance, this looks like a meaningful concession from Netanyahu, who has previously ruled out the idea of a Palestinian state. But it's worth noting that this includes no concrete commitments, merely a recognition from Israel and the US that it's the aspiration of the Palestinian people. So could this deal actually bring eternal peace to the Middle East? Well, at first glance, there seems to be a cause for optimism. Israel has made at least some superficial concessions, and the deal has been well received internationally. The UK, France, and Italy all expressed support for the plan, and the foreign ministers of Saudi Arabia, Jordan, the UAE, Indonesia, Pakistan, Turkey, Qatar, and Egypt released a joint statement, quote, welcoming Trump's plan. The fact that the Arab countries that would be expected to lead the ISF, like Egypt and Jordan, and relatively Hamas-friendly countries like Turkey and Qatar, have all reacted so positively does seem like a good sign. Nonetheless, familiar stumbling blocks do remain. Most obviously, this requires Hamas to accept their demilitarization for the good of ordinary Palestinians, which feels unlikely. Furthermore, the plan is remarkably vague. It isn't clear, for instance, what the precise relationship between the Palestinian government and the Trump-led Board of Peace will be. The deal text only tells us the board will, quote, set the framework. Nor are there any concrete commitments vis-a-vis the Palestinian state, or any clarity on who could serve on the technocratic Palestinian committee. Would civil servants who served under Hamas, for instance, be excluded? Perhaps most problematic is the lack of clear timetable for the IDF's promised withdrawal. This isn't in and of itself a bad thing. Lots of peace deals use vague language as a stepping stone to a better defined agreement. But it is a problem in this context, because there's zero trust between Israel and Hamas will expect Israel to exploit this vagueness in the future. Netanyahu's comments since the deal's presentation won't have helped things either. On Monday evening, Netanyahu put out a video in Hebrew framing the deal as a diplomatic ploy, claiming that instead of Hamas isolating us, we isolated Hamas, and that, quote, the IDF will remain in most of the Strip. Netanyahu's comments were presumably an attempt to placate the far-right ministers whom he relies on for his parliamentary majority. But this didn't work, and on Tuesday, Finance Minister Bezalel Smotrich denounced the proposal as a, quote, resounding diplomatic failure. Furthermore, contrary to what recent headlines have implied, Israel's Arab neighbors have not actually said that they support the plan. Rather, they, quote, welcome Trump's efforts towards peace, but insist upon a comprehensive deal that includes, quote, full Israeli withdrawal and a two-state solution under which Gaza is fully integrated with the West Bank. This isn't explicitly guaranteed by the deal, and again, Netanyahu's comments won't have helped. Not only has Netanyahu claimed that the IDF will remain in most of the Strip, but he also reiterated his opposition to a Palestinian state, insisting, quote, it is not written in the agreement, and expressing skepticism that, quote, the leopard can change its spots. In other words, casting doubt on the idea of the Palestinian Authority ever taking control of Gaza, and thus the prospect of a unified Palestinian state covering both Gaza and the West Bank. Now, this isn't to say that the deal will necessarily fail, and Trump does deserve credit for squeezing out at least some concessions from Netanyahu. Nonetheless, history doesn't bode well here, and familiar obstacles are already rearing their heads. Ultimately, we live in a world where growing geopolitical and economic issues like this are hitting the headlines every day. And while it's easy to sometimes feel overwhelmed, there are ways to stay sharp. And we know that the easiest way to do this is with Brilliant. That's because Brilliant teaches you by doing, using active learning techniques to train you in the principles behind otherwise complex subjects, and ensuring you actually understand what's going on. With their ever-growing collection of lessons in topics ranging from maths to science to AI, there's plenty to get you started. Not only does each lesson offer a comprehensive mix of engaging problems and competitive features, but Brilliant also helps you stay consistent, keeping you motivated and excited to learn every single day. Take their newly updated science courses, for example. Here you can learn how to build simple computers out of logic gates, or open your eyes to the world around you by solving puzzles with science. Each lesson will help you to develop your scientific intuition through visual, interactive problem solving that gets you hands-on with key concepts. Try Brilliant for free and start your learning journey today by visiting brilliant.org/TLDR, scanning the QR code on screen, or clicking the link in the description. By doing so, you'll also get 20% off an annual premium subscription, and they'll know you came from us, which really helps us out.